Hi folks, and welcome to ATTRIBUTIONS Armory. Today we're going to discuss how to inspect your defensive and carry ammo to ensure maximum reliability when you most need it. The goal is to root out any potentially defective loads before we find out the hard way. Before we begin, please remember to give us a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. And don't forget to swing by ATTRIBUTIONSArmory.com and check out a bottle of our citrus-powered synthetic CLP. This stuff is guaranteed 100% cruelty-free. There's not a single drop of cruelty in this bottle, folks. It's just pure love from our hearts to your arms. Now, before you start, here's some helpful tools that should kind of get you going in the right direction. We've got a reloading scale that's accurate to 1/10 of a grain. We've got a precision caliper that's accurate to 1/1000th of an inch. I've got a magnifying glass because my eyes kind of suck. I've got gloves so that I can keep my fingerprints off my ammo. Now, I've had this discussion before with people about why I like to keep my prints off the ammo. There's actually more than one reason, but really my main reason is that I just don't want my fingerprints on shell casings that are going to be carried around or just in a gun that's left loaded all the time for defensive purposes. If that gun gets stolen or something like that, I just don't want to have to explain why I've got shell casings with my fingerprints on it at some crime scene somewhere. That's just one less thing that I might have to explain. And of course, there's the fact that just having your fingerprints on your shell casings and on your ammo, it doesn't really serve any useful purpose. So gloves and a clean and dry rag, just in case if you get some fingerprints on there or something, you can wipe that off with something that's clean, dry, not oily, and not going to contaminate your ammo. So first off, you're going to want to choose some quality defensive ammo from a reputable manufacturer. And to be completely honest with you, from my experience, I just don't think it really matters that much which kind you pick. There's all kinds of different kind of gimmicky marketing twists in the ammo world. It matters more if you hit the sweet spot, so just pick whatever kind of defensive ammo that your gun seems to work well with. Next, you're going to want to make sure and choose some ammo that's been properly stored in a cool and dry environment. The actual age of the ammo is a lot less relevant than the storage conditions. So you can see here that this box of ammo was purchased in June of 2008, so we're going to be going on almost 13 years, 12 and a half years here as of the time of this video. And this ammo is, I've been burning through this stash for a while and it works just fine, but it's been stored in a sealed ammo box with some desiccant silica to absorb the moisture, and it's been stored at room temperatures indoors in a climate controlled house for its entire lifetime. This ammo should last indefinitely. At the very least, 50 plus years is not outrageous for that type of storage condition with modern cartridge. Just remember, worry more about how the ammo is stored as opposed to how old it is. Now let's jump into the actual inspection portion of this video. The first thing we're going to want to do right when we open up our ammo box is we're going to want to just inspect all of our primers, and that's what I'm using this magnifying glass for. Or if you've got really good young eyes, you might not need to do that. You can just look at it real closely. But basically what I'm doing is I'm just running across all of these primers and I'm checking for things like, are they seated too deep? Are they underseated? Too shallow? Do we see any damage? Any irregularities? Anything like that, anything that just looks out of the norm on the primers. Then we're going to want to take a baseline average weight of 10 rounds. So I'm just going to weigh 10 rounds. I'm going to add up all those numbers together and I'm going to divide by 10, and that will give me kind of my median, my average weight that I should expect from this batch. Then I'm going to go through and weigh each round individually, and I'm going to set it aside if it weighs outside of about 0.25% from average. So 0.25% above or below the average that we get. So for this 9mm, it might be maybe a 0.4 to 0.5 grain above or below average. I would say if it goes there, I would put it into the outliers pile. And you can keep those outliers for practice or something like that, unless they're just severely out of spec, and then you just want to get rid of those. Once I've gotten rid of the overweight or underweight rounds, I'm going to want to go ahead and measure the overall length of 10 remaining rounds rounds to get a baseline average. Once I've got my average overall length, I want to go ahead and just measure every round that's left and set aside any rounds that are plus or minus another 0.25% from average. So for 9mm, the overall length on this particular round, roughly average wise, is about 1.125 inches. So that would be about 0.03 of an inch plus or minus that. Now you don't have to be super hardcore about this, but definitely I wouldn't go for, in this example, more than maybe 4 or 5 thousandths absolutely max out of spec on either side of the average. You can also do a little bit of spot checking on the brass trim length the same way, just to kind of ensure that it's properly trimmed and it doesn't result in some weird headspace issues. Now let's do a final visual inspection of the cartridge case. We want to check and verify that the crimp is complete and uniform. And for those of you who might not be aware of this or might not know much about it, the crimp is right up here toward the top of the case mouth. And this is the part where they kind of clamp down right onto that bullet to hold this whole thing together. So you want to make sure that the top here is somewhat slightly tapered inward and kind of rolls up as you go toward the opening of the case mouth. You're also going to want to check for little cracks and fractures on the case mouth itself. This is where the actual magnifying glass can come in handy, because sometimes these cases, they might not get heat treated properly, and then when they get run through all the dies and they get expanded, contracted, expanded, contracted, what ends up happening is they get brittle and develop some little micro fractures here. So you're going to kind of want to watch out for those. Those are particularly bad for semi-autos. Micro fractures up here toward the top with revolvers are really not a huge concern, but definitely with semi-autos, I'm very concerned with micro fractures, and I tend to get rid of those. Now, if you see any micro fractures down here toward the case head, that's where you're definitely going to want to get rid of them, whether it's revolver or whatever. That could lead to a case head separation, and that's a very dangerous cartridge case failure. You're also going to want to check the actual rim back here for any burrs or damage or abnormalities or anything like that. And of course, inspect the case wall itself. So it should be smooth. It shouldn't have any creases or major bumps or burrs or any real defects that you can see visibly. So a real quick way to actually check this, if you're, if you want to double check and be real sure, is to just pull your barrel out, and you can just kind of drop that round right into the firing chamber, and it should just drop in without using any force. It should go all the way in, and then it should also drop right back out without having to be pulled out. In and out. That's a round that should feed and function for the most part. And that right there would indicate that it's a round that doesn't necessarily have any case wall defects that would, prevent it from feeding properly. Now, there are a few things that you're going to generally want to avoid in order to protect your ammo and maintain its integrity. First and foremost, and this is really important, is avoid excessive oils or solvents that are in contact with the ammo. This includes places such as the firing chamber, inside the barrel, the feed ramp, the breech face, and of course the magazine. Now, believe me, I've got a personal vested interest in encouraging you guys to use as much CLP as you possibly can. But here's the thing, regardless of what product you end up choosing, it is actually counterproductive and sometimes dangerous to leave too much oily residue in a firearm. So please make sure that you use a dry patch or a dry cloth or whatever to clean out some of that excess CLP in those critical areas. And definitely keep it off your ammo. And again, that applies to any cleaning product. And lastly, watch out for these kind of oily silicone impregnated gun cloths when it comes to wiping ammo. Definitely don't wipe your ammo with anything like this. If I need to wipe my ammo down, I just use one of these little terry cloths that you can find at, Home Depot or Lowe's in the painting aisle. So I know this seems like kind of a lot of work, but I really think it's worth it, at least for the ammo that you have in the main magazine that is in your gun. Now, I understand that some people might be on a budget, or, ammo's really scarce right now too, so you might not be comfortable with tossing out what might be legitimate rounds that probably will function just fine. What you can do is just put the outliers in your spare magazine and put the perfect in-spec ammo in your gun. But regardless of all of that, if you do still find one or two that are just grossly out of spec, please just toss them. It's just not worth the risk. With that, we hope that this video was helpful and hopefully doing some of this stuff will help give you some peace of mind. We'd love to hear your comments on how you inspect your own defensive ammo, or just let us know if we missed anything in this video. So thanks for visiting today, and we'll see you again next time at Attica Armory.